So can we all just say happy birthday to them if I make a video? Yeah. Would everyone be willing to do that? All right. How about a little bit of a wave? Can I even get a wave out of this crowd? Starting on no, a bit like a real wave. Like, all right, come on, it's like Final 4 days. You guys should be able to do it.
I walked in.
All right, wait a second. Here we go. I'm getting onto video. Ready? Wave's gonna start over here. You ready? All right. 3, 2. And then happy birthday, John and Andy. Happy birthday, John and Andy. You can do it, guys. I always coach them.
Happy birthday to you.
Woo!
Happy
All right.
Birthday to
Dan took it all the way. I like it. All right. Thank you. That's awesome.
I understand it.
I've been sending them all day these videos, and they're really digging it. So that's awesome. I have to try and make up for not being there. So, oh, thank you, whoever gave me the aw. Thank you. I appreciate that. But they'll remember this birthday more than anything, right? Because they'll keep getting these videos. We're going to start in a minute. We have to wait till, or have we started now? I'm just talking randomly to the internet in the middle of this. Okay, great. Hi, everybody. I'm Adam. I'm a partner at GSV. In earlier instantiations of my career, I ran international product management at Google. I was the COO of Etsy, and I was the CEO of a company called Teachers Pay Teachers. And I tell you a bit about my background, and I'm about to introduce my amazing panelists, because we're going to be talking about a real evolution in technology, and particularly in the EdTech sector, as borders are becoming far less relevant and important than they once were, which I think is really extraordinary and exciting. So let me introduce my panelists. Nahm, who's the Chief Financial Officer at Mathpresso, which has an app called Quanda, Q-A-N-D-A, Q&A, but pronounced Quanda, which is started in Korea. I'm going to let you all say where your companies have started. And then, just a second. My phone has just decided to go crazy on me, and that's where all my notes are. Okay, Jamie, you're back. Jamie Farrell, who's the Chief Revenue Officer of Emeritus and has a great track record in EdTech for a number of years, really helping organizations through both leadership and in helping those organizations monetize. And Dan Vigdor, who's the founder and executive chair of ThriveDX, once called HackerU. And let me ask you all to, in a brief lightning round, introduce yourself and then tell us where your company was originally based and what your kind of core markets are now. And we'll go in reverse order. So Dan, I'll start with you.
Not ladies first?
Nice try.
Yeah. It's 2022, Dan. It's like...
Well, welcome everybody. Really, thank you for coming and joining us. ThriveDX today is a global leader in cybersecurity training and job creation. We started in Israel over 15 years ago. We train government, enterprise, higher ed, and people from diverse communities, from different socioeconomic backgrounds, training them in very comprehensive and rigorous cyber programming, enabling and placing them in very sustainable, lucrative, and in-demand jobs of the future. We're really in the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, workforce development, and training. We really protect the world from one of the biggest threats there is today, the cybersecurity talent shortage. We protect government, enterprise, and people. And thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here, Dan. I want to throw the lightning question back at you as well, which is where was your company originally based, and where are your key markets now?
Well, we started in Israel about 15 years ago. My partner really started about 30 years ago. Israel was a growing startup nation and really needed digital skilled employees. We became Israel's #1 IT and cyber training center, really taking people with no skills, training them, and placing them in this very in-demand jobs. As you know, Israel, cybersecurity is a matter of life and death. It's not just a matter of ransomware. Our second market we moved was to the US, and today we work in US, Europe, Asia, Middle East. US, we work across the US in top-tier universities, and in Europe we actually work with about 500 enterprise clients, training and protecting tens of millions of users.
Great. And Jamie, you guys have a really international portfolio as well. Tell us where the company, a little bit more, well, tell us first a little bit, obviously, about Emeritus' great work and mission.
Sure, the guy you don't want to go after, the executive chairman. So first, congratulations. I have been a huge fan of, I still think of it as HackerU since day one. So Emeritus partners with the top 50 universities across the globe. And so we provide high quality education, accessible, affordable, from K through gray, right? So kindergarten all the way through senior executives. We started, so it's interesting, I actually don't think about our business as an export, quote unquote. So we knew from day one that we were gonna be a global business. Our CEO, Ashwin, he went to HBS, and he had grown up in India, and he knew, going back to India, that he needed to bring all of the high quality education that he had gotten back to his home country. And so while our first classes were in India, it was always with the intention of going global. Today, 71% of our students are outside of the US. And so 50% are in between LATAM and the US. And I forgot the next question.
Well, no, it's just where did you start, which I think, what's your home country? Where is the country currently domiciled, company domiciled?
India.
India, okay, great. And then Sue, let's go to you, and same thing. Tell us a bit more about the work of Mathpresso and where you're based and where your key markets are.
Sure, so thanks for having me here. This is Sue, CFO of Mathpresso. As Adam said, we operate a K-12 AI-powered tutoring app called Kwanda. Kwanda really stands for Q&A, so if you spell out Q&A, it becomes Kwanda. Our main product is education search. So we have one of the world's globally largest search platform in education vertical. Our daily image search is around 12 million. And building on top of the search platform, we want to be an education aggregator. So be it asynchronous learning materials, videos, exam questions or practice question, and then also synchronous classes, so one-on-one tutoring as well as group classes. So we started in Korea back in 2016, and it started as homework aids. So when students are studying alone, getting a personalized learning help is one of the biggest pain point for students. And when we started the service in Korea, we saw a massive user adoption. So within 2 years, we became a service that is used by over 70% of middle and high school students. And so we started to think that this pain point of student wanting to get their personalized learning help is maybe not just Korean students' problem, but maybe a global problem. So we decided to go into our neighboring country. We picked Japan market as first international market, where the education system and needs are similar to Korea. And then we saw, again, very quick adoption during the students, and we expanded into other Asian countries.
I'm just curious about, I'm going to put it out to the audience, and for those of you who are online, just, enjoy the conversation as if we were asking you as well. How many of you are here representing a company or working for a company that is based outside the US? Quite a number of people. And for all of you, let me ask you the follow-on question, which is, how many of you are serving a market primarily that is different than your home market? So also quite a number. And this is really where we want to take this conversation. I'm reminded of the days when I was running international product at Google, and I used to go and I had a presentation I would bring to senior executive meetings, and it had a picture of the domestic terminal at an airport and the international terminal at the airport. And I would cross off domestic and write us, and international and write them, and say, you've now put me in charge of the them team. This is crazy, right? Innovation is happening everywhere, and every team in every country is an us team. So education was, I think, particularly parochial in that it was locked up by country. There were not 20 years ago many global EdTech platforms in the way that there are today. And now those borders seem to be falling away. So I thought the first thing we could try to do in the conversation is define terms a little bit by what we even mean by export. Because I think there are three elements, right? Where are you domiciled? Where is your employee base? And what is your target market? And you may have a truly global company, or you may be sort of split amongst all of those. So let me just do a sort of lightning round with all of you and go back. Where you're domiciled in Korea, and where are your employees, and where's your primary market today still?
So our company is domiciled in Korea. Most of our employee is based in Korea. Out of 300 employees, about 200 lives in Korea, and then others are international subsidiaries. In terms of the user base, we have about 14 million monthly active users, and about 15% is from Korea. So we definitely have more global audiences in terms of our traffic.
Can I dig into that stat more? So only 15% are now from Korea, and you're very popular in Korea. So where else are you seeing? What are your top markets that you're seeing usage in?
In terms of the student user numbers, Indonesia and Vietnam is one of the bigger markets, 3 to 5 million monthly active users, and then Thailand and Japan. So Asian country predominantly. And then we also have a generic Spanish and English app, which is spread across globally. So major country-wise, we focus on 5 countries, but in terms of the user base, around 20 countries.
Fantastic. And let me put the same thing to you. We know you're domiciled in India is the company, but you truly have offices everywhere now. So where are your employees and where are your markets?
Sure. So we have virtual offices everywhere, I think.
That's right. Who has an office? I sound so old school. It's like saying phonograph.
We shall see if we have offices. And so we truly are global. So we have, our team spans over 27 different countries right now. And as for our markets, our 2 largest, again, are the US and LATAM. Right now we're focusing a ton on emerging markets. And so one of the things, as I mentioned in our mission, is to provide access. And so we do think about the fact that talent is evenly distributed, right? But opportunity is not.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we focus a lot on right now, again, our emerging markets are growing 3x. We kind of say Wharton, right? Like, there is no reason that somebody in Brazil that can't speak English shouldn't have access to a Wharton course. So in Brazil, we'll take that course and we'll translate into Portuguese, right? And so we do that in emerging markets all over the world.
And same to you, Dan. So are you based in Israel today, or are you based in the U.S. now?
So myself, I'm based in the U.S. We started in Israel. The first 10 years we were only in Israel. Today, 15 years later after we started, the only offices we have is actually in Israel. But 70% of our revenue is from the U.S. We actually work in 60 different countries. We have out of our 2,400 employees, about 1,800 of them are in the U.S., also all remote. And so today, it's only about 15% of the business is still in Israel, and the rest of the business is global.
So one of the things that we've talked to, and at GSV Ventures, where I'm a partner, we have in our portfolio a company called Quizzes, which is an extraordinary company based in India, serving an almost entirely US and Canadian user base. Now it's actually more global user base. But one of the questions that I asked Ankit that I now want to ask, who is the CEO and would have come but was not able to travel for this trip, was, do you want your users to know where you're based? So do you want people to know that originally you were an Israeli company or an Indian company or a Korean company, or is that something you keep quiet? How do you think about that?
Well, that's a good question, and it's has a little bit of geopolitical connotation since I'm from Israel, right? So sometimes it's amazing to say we're from Israel. 40% of the world's cyber technologies come from Israel. Israel is one of the most competitive markets in IT and cyber. So you want to scream it out sometimes. But we won't get into it, but as we all understand, sometimes it's not the best to say that we're from Israel with different geopolitical challenges that we have today.
So let me stick with you. How do you handle that? How do you show different parts of your identity in your marketing materials or your pitch?
We try to be completely apolitical. So we try to bring out the advantages, but not talk about anything that would stripe up any kind of confrontation. Myself, I've lived all over the world. I was born in Kenya. I lived in Iran. I lived in Russia. I lived in Miami. I lived in Israel. I lived in Europe. I lived in New York. So I'm very easily adaptable, and I believe in people.
Right.
Everything else is politics.
Great. You got to clap for that. Go ahead. Jamie, let me ask you the same question. So do you talk to your customer base about the fact you're an Indian-based company? Does it matter?
So I think it's interesting, right? So to start, we have multiple customers. So as I mentioned, we partner with the top 50 universities globally. So I think of them as partners, right? And they know that we are global. So while we may be domiciled in India, again, we have people over 27 countries. And so I actually doesn't really come up with our partners. As long as it's high quality, and I think Dan mentioned it's all about the people, right? And as long as we're building connections and driving impact with our learners, it hasn't really been questioned. Now, when we speak to students, we have student support and program advising centers all over the world. So we have India, we have LATAM, we have the US. One of the things we really focus a lot on is when we go into local markets, right, ensuring that we bring people in who understand the intricacies of those local markets. So I think in that sense, right, when we're in like one of these emerging markets, certainly we're bringing in people that understand the culture and understand how to translate the value prop to a student and how it's going to impact their life in Israel versus how it's going to impact their life in the U.S.
So local is sort of there's a base, there's a global layer, and there's a local layer, and keeping those clean. Great. And then let me ask you the same question, Sue. So do people know that Mathpresso is a Korean company?
So we don't actively promote that we're Korean when we enter into new market. We wouldn't use that as a marketing message. But certain Southeast Asian countries, we've had good user feedback because Koreans are known for our attitude towards education. So enrollment into university or math scores, just generic education, passion for education is pretty known. So countries like Vietnam, they all know Kwanda is from Korea. And together with some of the Korean contents being very popular these days, we haven't heard much. We've got more favorable feedback from the users. But countries like Japan, some of the users think that we're a Japanese app.
Got it. Really helpful. All right, so I want to ask a question because when I was at Google and I was running international product, I was cognizant, first of all, that I was an American bringing in yet another product around the world. So America, clearly has a reputation. And one of the things we're talking about is that all countries have their reputation on the international stage, and you have to play in and around that. But in localizing, we made lots of mistakes. So I want to do a quick speed round and ask everybody sort of what's one silly mistake that you all have made in localization. And if you all have some that you're thinking about, feel free to share them later. These always make great stories. I will share one from our localization days at Google when my teams were localizing what's called the Weather One box. So if you type in weather and your zip code or your postal code, you'll get icons that show is it sunny, is it raining, is it whatever. And we use the same icons in Japan, and people continually in user studies said, why do you keep showing me pictures of an amber traffic light? We're like, that's the sun. And they were like, no, the sun is orange or red when we use that in a weather app in Japan. So there's funny places that you can get caught up and sort of make these silly mistakes. Any ones that you guys made as you moved into new markets that come to mind? Dan?
Well, the truth is we made lots of mistakes. And I think that the only people that don't make mistakes are people who don't try. But one mistake that always comes to mind is we actually partnered with the wrong partner. And that partner became a competitor. So when that happened, it actually gave us even more energy. Gave us more energy to make a better product, to put in more passion, and to really make the best user experience so that student will always have the best journey.
How about you, Jamie? Anything that Emeritus did?
I couldn't get approval. My PR person says I gave her 3.
Give us her name or his name.
Right? Jill, didn't Wallace tell me?
No.
She did. She said you can't say any of those. But actually, none of them were from Emeritus, so it's interesting. Am I allowed to engage the audience?
I think so. They're here.
Right.
They're very nice people. We've been already talking to them.
So I've only been at Emeritus for a little bit under a year, and we haven't been able to travel, right? And so, you know, like, I have learned things. I actually learned my first week that when you have people from 10 different countries on a call and you ask them a question, that I did learn that yes means something no different in every language, right? And every culture, and you have to push in a different way to get the details in every culture. So I've screwed up there a few times. I start every call now with good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I've scheduled calls for 1 in the morning. So I've done all of, I think, the usual things. But I think Lisa. So Lisa is our president of university partnership. She's the other person that wouldn't let me say anything.
Just everyone should know there are good stories from Emeritus later if you go after. They're not going to say it for the video, but okay.
So Lisa, you've probably traveled to more countries probably than most people in this room. So what is, I don't want to know the funniest, what is the most embarrassing moment that you have had in traveling? And is this an embarrassing moment?
This is good it's embarrassing for me. You're taking the moderator's chair. It's fantastic.
And Lisa, let's not
Lisa,
put
you want to
on
think about that for a minute? Sure. All right, we'll give Lisa a moment. We'll come back and we'll go to Sue and see if Sue has a fun story for us.
Right, so we're in the K-12 space, and K-12 education is very localized. So every country we went in, we make sure we get the local curriculum, local teachers involved, and also make sure ecosystems built onshore, and we have an operational protocol for that. But when we went into Indonesia, we didn't know the student behavior. So in Indonesia, students go to school very early, so they start school either at 6 to 7, and a lot of users were starting their study at 6 a.m. So one day, our server was about to explode because a lot of users were signing up and using our service at 6 to 11 a.m. And our tech support was basically, panicking because we didn't expect that, because in other countries, usually users are using that in the afternoon. So that's one example. So we had to make sure that we understand the local users, even timing in terms of their behaviors. And also, people think math is universal language, and the way that we write is similar. But when we went into Vietnam, for example, here in the United States or other countries, pi would be usually 3.14, so 3.14. But in Vietnam, it will be written as 3.14, which again is very confusing. And so here we used comma for displaying 1,000, but there they display for a decimal point. And also, say 8.9. Implies a number that's smaller than 9 in US or even in Korea. But in Vietnam, if you put 8.9, that dot implies multiplier, so it becomes 72. And so
this could be a really problem in a math solving app.
Exactly.
Yeah, you could get a lot of kids with a lot of bad grades.
Exactly. And our technology is OCR, and it recognizes the image, and then we solve it automatically or through database. And so once we figured it out, we had to make sure we would change our algorithm, so based on where users are based and also their nationality or what curriculum they're studying under, we had to alter the solutions. So that's one of the learning, even at the math, you have to localize.
It's interesting. I mean, the flip side of this question is really I think in some ways the interesting question, particularly for those of you here who have have a company based in one country and thinking about serving other markets, which is, how do you prepare yourself? Dan, you said, first of all, you're going to make mistakes, get used to them, get ready, get focused, right? But then some mistakes are fun and some mistakes are not. So when Chevy made the Chevy Nova, which was a very popular car in the US and then couldn't sell it in Puerto Rico because it means Chevy don't go, Nova, it didn't work so well, and that was a pretty expensive mistake. So how do you get ready as you're thinking about going into a new market to be aware, to be listening, to be learning, and then if you need to be recovering? Anyone want to go first? Go ahead, Jamie.
We go in and hire the best people on the ground, right? And so what I mean by that,
Can I push in on that immediately? You pushed in on me, so I'm
you're the
coming right
moderator.
back
Do I
at
have
you.
a choice?
I know, you were the moderator for a minute. So how do you know it's the best people? Because we always go looking for the best people, and then I found that sometimes as I was hiring in different markets, I realized that in my local market, I know how to calibrate which employer they worked for, which school they went to. Sort of, I can make a bunch of associations that I can't make when I go into a new market. So how do you even figure that out?
So a couple of ways. So one, I would say you don't, right? Like that's like period, full stop, you don't. Just like in the US, you don't. So I think, one of the things, if we're just being honest, we also have a global team of investors, right? And so when you look at investors like SoftBank, they do know who the best talent is, or certainly people that they trust in every market. And so when you have, and I'll go back to Ashwin, when you have the HBS network, when you have investors that have people, so that's kind of the starting point for us, at least to get people that we trust within our network. To your point, we may find out that they are not the best, but at least it's within network. So.
Right. So, how about you, Dan? Let me ask you the same question. How do you get yourself ready and recover? How do you get yourself ready for a new market?
I take a good shower. No, so it's about people.
What did you say?
I take a good shower when I get ready. Yeah.
You take a
Start
shower.
with
You take a shower. Always a good plan. Can you talk to my
Yes.
10-year-old kids later about that? It's also
And
important.
brush their teeth.
Yeah.
But it's about people, right? It's people, product, and process. So we talked about people, but it's also about the product, right? It has to be product market fit. So whenever we go to any market, we first find out what the employers need, because we actually serve the employers. We create jobs. And to create jobs, you have to create the right curriculum and the right product to fit the outcome, which is to get people ready for the job. So we do a lot of market research. We see what employers need, what's the exact type of curriculum, what's the exact type of outcomes, the exact type of competencies that they need. And then we look at how they like to learn, because it's a lot about the product, and then to make the processes that fit that local market. Because it's not the same process in Israel as it is working with top-tier university in the US. So you really have to adapt the people, product, and process to that local market to make sure there's a perfect product market fit.
Sue, do you have thoughts on this question as well?
Yeah, I think agreeing to Dan, definitely we focus on our product. So I mentioned earlier our product is search focused. So our search engine, the AI, character recognition, all of those algorithms are developed in Korea and centralized. When we go into different market, then we will get local teachers involved and build a local database to make sure our contents are relevant for the local students. And then we also look at their academic calendar when it comes to how to engage our users. If it's vacation period, certain countries would study less, certain countries will focus, study even more during holiday season. So we've done this enough of many countries, so we have certain lesson learned that when we go into new country, we check, certain elements in terms of curriculum and everything that we said. But certainly when we go into new countries, then we learn new things, and that goes back into our operational sort of manual. So our global expansion team is aware of things to watch out for when we go into next market. Yeah.
Is there a particular playbook of who you hire first? Have you figured? And you don't have to share your playbooks with everyone, but do you know now when you go to a new market, start with the country manager, or start with the product, or start? Is there a menu you're using, or is it bespoke each country you go into?
It's bespoke, but we like to start selling before we even take a local team.
So you really can get signal back from the market
Exactly.
first to understand if it's ready for you. How about you? Yours is not a direct sales product. It's a kind of people find it product, right?
Yeah, so we don't have to have a local team when we launch. We can do it remotely. We can recruit some freelancers from headquarters, but when we want to localize our service, for example, more local classes, or then that we need to localize. So that's when we start hiring the local teams. So for example, in Vietnam, apart from the regional head, everyone is local employees.
So it gets to another interesting question. Do you set for yourself that there are some things that are the base no matter where you are? Do your team members know what parts of your corporate culture, what parts of your pedagogy are, hey, this is fixed at a global level, and this is where you have room to play, or do you let them just experiment freely? Do you just glance at your PR people again? No, I'm just giving you a hard time,
University
Jamie.
partnerships.
Oh, university partnerships.
Do you want to put somebody else on the spot?
I'm trying. I'm going to switch back to moderator. I just put Dan on the spot.
Dan, is there a thought on that?
Well, for us, we have to hire the best people, right? But we have to hire people that care. When you're in education and you have a mission and a vision, and really what we do transform people's lives, but it's a challenge, right? It's a grind, it's a challenge. But when you see how you change people's lives and you find them new jobs and you really create generational impact, to do that, we always make sure that everybody knows that we need to hire people that care.
So do you think that education is more or less forgiving as an industry? So software has been being localized for years and years now. Consumer apps, consumer products. But education is newer on the truly global stage because usually it was a local textbook provider, it was a local company. Do you think that as you move into markets, your customers, whether they're institutional or they are end-line customers, are they more forgiving because you're in education and trying to do the right thing? Or are they less forgiving because education is so sensitive and can feel so importantly local?
Yeah, I think that actually education has changed. I think the learners are more demanding today, and they're more interested in their outcome. So I actually think that it might have been more forgiving, but now as technology comes into everything, including education, and there's different hybrid models, people know that. And why would they sometimes go through a 4-year university and get or not get a job? Maybe they just want a job. Maybe they just want to do something to learn, and to learn in a great experience and a great journey. So I think today people are more demanding, and we all have to work harder and get better student journeys.
And what do you see, Jamie?
I agree with Dan. I think, so more demanding, and I think one of the things that we've realized, certainly globally, and especially over the last decade, is not everybody learns the same way, and not everybody wants the same outcome. And so we take Thrive, right? They do an incredible job building, am I allowed to say boot camps? Building boot camps, and then placing students in jobs, right? And so at the same time, you look at Emeritus. So we offer short courses. We offer 6 weeks, 6 weeks to 3 months, more of an upskill, right? So that's the different type of outcome. The course and the pedagogy is a little bit different than our senior executive programs. So our senior executive programs, if I were to oversimplify, we take a university that is known for being the best at something. So let's take Kellogg, right? And we partner it with an aspirational program, so their chief marketing officer program. Different pedagogy, different outcome. And we do that across, again, everywhere from K through Gray. So I agree with everything Dan said, and then I would also take it a step further and say different learning styles, I think, to Dan's point, demand and deserve different types of pedagogy and teaching.
Sue?
Yeah, so I would agree with that students are more demanding. And our competition is not another digital platform. It's actually offline traditional legacy players. So for example, everyone thinks that Korea is such a small country. We have 50 million population, but we have over 80,000 private centers for after tutoring activities. So the needs are highly fragmented. A student in the same district, depending on which high school they go to, their requirements are completely different, let alone that everyone's students' personal ability and their goals are different, but environment is very different, and the system around it is very complicated. And I think that's the reason why it's been hard to make a global platform in the K-12 education. And so hence, we thought, approaching with the search service where we can garner massive user base and use a big data and learning data to start personalizing the education would be one of the ways to solve it.
So that is such a beautiful point. As I want to give you all a kind of a last word, but a wonderful way to think about this is less the question of exporting from one country to another and thinking about the sort of the broad culture overlays there, and instead start to think that all educators are demanding a truly personalized experience. So within a given country, across country lines, right, who you are as a learner is much more than your culture and your country. It's also your learning style and your needs. And I think our learners across the world are now demanding more and more of that, particularly as we come into this next wave of having lived through everyone studying at home and everyone in the family watching. So is there a last word you'd share with about your work or about companies that are looking to do similar sort of global platform plays in education? Sue, why don't I start back with you, and then we'll work our way back this way.
Sure. So I think the last point that we talked about, how everyone's needs are personal, and I think a lot of us, the vision is to provide high quality education to everyone and really increase that accessibility, and that frankly just makes I think all of our employees proud, and being able to access high quality education shouldn't depend on your cultural or national background. And so if one platform or many platforms, frankly, can solve that problem and bring equity in education, I think that's what we're really trying to. And there are many traditional ways to deliver education, and this transformation will take some time, although COVID accelerated it. So we'll just have to do it together as an industry, and that's why we're together, right? So.
Wow, well said. Thank you so much. Jamie.
Well said. Can I plus one? No.
We can all plus one.
Plus one.
On Zoom, we can just
Right.
keep clicking our hands up and our...
Like Sue's like, mic dropped. So I genuinely agree with everything that Sue said. I think, for me, and certainly Emeritus, as you mentioned when you were introducing me, I've been really fortunate to have been part of some of the best programs and fastest growing companies within education. The reason I chose to partner and work with Emeritus was really because it was the only company that I saw that was truly global, right? And truly providing access. So there's a ton of companies out there that say we're global, and what that actually means is 70% of their people are in the US and 20% are between the UK and Australia, right? And so in my belief, in order to build a global business, you have to learn who your students are and who your learners are. Emeritus not only does that, but actually takes the extra step to translate into languages, to frankly spend the extra time to focus on emerging markets, to look at pricing strategies to make sure that people can afford our education. So I think, for me, again, like plus one on Sue, and that's why, Emeritus specifically, that is why I chose to work there, because I feel really good every day when I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh, okay, this isn't so bad.
That's great. Dan.
So thank you. I agree with both of you. It's very well said. I want to maybe concentrate on something else a bit, is actually that we should all wake up. We should all wake up and we should collaborate and really do that and step one foot forward after another. The cybersecurity problem is here. Cybercrime has risen 300 to 600% just in COVID. Today, the world needs 3.6 million cyber analysts. This is not a joke. We see what's happening today in the war. Cybercrime is here. Our energy, our transport, our government, our education, everything is online today. Everything is prone to huge cybercrime. And we need to wake up and collaborate. And at ThriveDX, we have a platform that enables companies, governments, people to support and make an impact, and to enable people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, diverse communities, anybody and everybody, come in, skill, train, and get a job in a very lucrative and very in-demand cyber market that will help protect the world today. And so all I say is come collaborate. Let's really solve the problem.
Thank you, Dan. That's great. So I want to thank all of you who joined us for this conversation, and those of you who joined us online. I think if there's a takeaway that I guess I would want to offer is I'm so thrilled that we've come to a point where we're thinking about learners on a global scale. We're thinking about education on a global scale. And we're trying to figure out, as a collective industry, how we match learners with the organization or the company that can most meet their needs, no matter where that company is, and what base they're operating from. So thank you to all of our great panelists and Jamie for being such a great sport and having such a great sense of humor and joking with me so much. And thank you to all of you. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your conference and a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.